Connecting.
Gotta tell you, Mac is easy for stuff that would. But Mac has so many other advantages that just really can't think about switching to Windows. All right. A couple friends. Ooh, Dirk McGurk. All right, he's wrapping up a phone call. I think he'll be around in a second. I'm gonna pull up some. Well.
Yo, can you hear me?
Yeah. All right. So stream is up and people are tuning in, so we might as well start here. We're gonna have another chill session. Date is March 14th, Thursday. Later tonight we'll be talking in stations midweek. Check that out. For now, for the next hour or two, we'll talk about Eve in a casual way and hang around. It's open to the public. So Tuesdays, Thursdays, 1600. I think we're at 1500 though today, right? Because the time changed. So around this time, Tuesdays, Thursdays, we have these relaxed chats with people from EVE Online. Talk about the meta, talk about the changes, what to expect, how to adapt, stuff like that. All right. Dirk McGurk's with me. We're going to talk about, first of all, I always like doing this. Peek in on books changed. I think we were looking at that on CC the other day. It's changed on yesterday. So the skill books have changed only yesterday. And if I look, Titan skill books are now 6 million. They actually were 5 million. 5.5 million yesterday. So they've gone up by 5%, 10%. And I think that's what you'll see across the board. Skill books have jumped up about 10% in price. It's not a big deal, but it is 500 million if you're going to buy these higher skill books. There's a list of what those price changes were. I was putting them on a spreadsheet, a numbers spreadsheet, but I don't have that right. Instead, I have this Oboe leaks, and we can go through this list and kind of see some stuff. I noted some of the places where I thought there would be big jumps. Clearly, the most expensive skill books are going to jump the most. 10% for 5 billion is 500 million. And some skills don't even come close to costing 500. But what you could have bought before was a Titan book and a carrier book, because the carrier books are 500 million. Now you can only buy the Titan book. So it is significant. The same as buying a carrier book in the past. But let's have a look. I wanted to show Titan, first of all. You can see all the Titan books went up to 6 million from 5.5. I thought they were 5, but they can 5.5. So that's a big jump. Another jump that I thought would happen. And by the way, I did end up, I'm a terrible investor, risking it. And I'm being facetious. I'm not a terrible investor, but I'm certainly not. Well, who knows? Because nobody ever tells you if they're good or not. They only tell you what they're good at. They never tell you like, oh, I really screwed up here or there. But I'll tell you both. Inside, yeah, here I bought some skill books before they changed over. So I bought some. Estimate price. So I bought some Titan skill books in Matar, Kaldari, Galente, and Amar. I had a feeling those would go up only because if you have enough money to get into a Titan, the skill book cost isn't going to set you back that much. So I'm sure they had some to just increase that. It would just seem most reasonable. I don't see any situation where a Titan would go down in price. Although you can make a case that skill books shouldn't be the barrier that blocks people out of these massive things, but I don't know. We could talk about that. And the other one that was probably going to go up was the carrier, and it did. It went up again about 10%, and that carrier price was 500 million. It's gone up to 550. So yeah, 10%. So all the carriers went up that amount because there are 4 racial carriers. You have to buy one for each race, just like you do. The funny thing is carriers, Titans, I think Dreadnoughts as well, those all can be bought anywhere. Whether you're in Jita, you can buy Kaldari, but you can also buy Minotaur and Galente, all at the same fair price of whatever the standard is. As we get going a little bit, you'll see that other skills cannot be found in certain regions. They have to be imported, and those will be higher. So other skill books that I bought that I thought would go up were anything associated with capital stuff. And then I also thought that fighters would go up. Again, I was thinking in very basic terms. There's a group of people making a ton of money with certain tools, so the cost for those tools probably go up because people can afford that. That's a very simplified way of looking at it. I don't think CCP works that simply, but sometimes the way they think and the basic way of thinking converge, and so buying stuff is like you use your first instincts. It may be right, but for different reasons. CCP has more advantage.
Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah. They can now, or did. Oh, okay. Can you hear me?
I can now.
Oh. Hold on a second. I'll put voice activity. There. And now you can hear everything I'm saying.
Why were you saying things?
Oh, this whole time.
Oh, shut up.
Yeah, I was. I was totally talking about skill books. I thought, well, he'll join me when he can. I didn't realize I was on push to talk.
Oh.
There's like 50 buttons you have to turn on in order to stream, and I missed one, but it was an important one. But here's Dirk McGurk with me. I'm going over skill books.
Oh, what? Like the new
prices. Well, the new prices, not the new mechanics that allow you to just buy skills without the book. But
yeah, I'm still a little confused about that. But yeah, I mean, as for the prices, I don't know. I mean, I don't necessarily know that I understand the rhyme or reason behind some of those prices. It was like, okay, so Titan went from 5.5 billion up to 6 billion, right? And like now, mind you, what was it? Maybe 3 years ago, I think it went from 5 billion to 5.5.
That's right. Right? That used to be 5 billion.
Yeah.
Thank you. I thought it was nuts.
Well, that's why when they say that skill books have never changed, like they have. But just real quick as an aside, I guess there are some people maybe up in the public channel. Imar wants to come. This room is locked, so.
Is it? Oh, I didn't unlock it. Okay. Hey, Imar, how are you? Hello, you're on air.
No, he'll jump in. He figures it out.
All right, so I'll change that over to now open, so anybody can jump into on air. Sorry if you tried before and couldn't get in.
And sorry if you did get in and he was talking.
Yeah,
but not talking in this channel.
Hello.
Hey, how are you, Amar?
But yeah,
I'm good.
We're talking about skill books and how the prices just went up.
I think I think it was Capital skill books went up, and so I okay, so I know Titan definitely did. I'm pretty sure, and I think that Carrier did as well. Like when you look at the price discrepancy
Yeah,
between Carrier and Dreadnought, right?
yeah.
Dreadnought, right? Dreadnought before was 100 million, and Carrier I think was what, like half a million, half a billion. It was
Uh,
500 million, and
That
now
was
both have gone up 50 million, which for one, right, is a 50% increase, and the other one's just a 10% increase.
yeah. Well, here's the thing. I think a long time ago, before there was another adjustment, long time ago, dreadnoughts were 90 million, carriers were 400 million, I think.
Yeah, I think they went from 400 to 500.
Yeah. And Titans were 5 billion. And then they
Right.
switched. They went up to 100 million for the Dread, 500 million for the Carrier, and 5.5 billion for for a Titan.
Now, mind you that Carrier obviously has back at that time, right? The reason why Carrier is so much more expensive than Dreadnought, right? Dreadnought was this niche kind of ship. It was basically used for this just this one thing. The first thing anybody trained into as a capital pilot was Carrier because it had a ship maintenance bay, and it had room to hold stuff. Right?
It's a
Remember the old
suitcase.
suitcase carriers?
Yeah.
And
Wait, let me
uh,
describe that real quick. The suitcase carrier was where you would put all your subcapital ships, and then you would only jump in your carrier, and it was basically how you would take your arsenal with you in these, in these medium-sized alliances. Anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
well, yeah, it was the thing that you as kind of an entry level capital pilot, right? You now all of a sudden had jump capability, okay, with obviously excellent range for carriers back at that time. That you could carry your stuff in wherever it was. You're going to join a new group, or whatever. You're just running to high sec, from null, or whatever, right? It was like this was your suitcase to carry stuff in between ships and the stuff in your hangar thing on board. I forget what it's called now.
Mhm.
Whereas Dreadnought, you couldn't do that. It was basically just a warship, and that was it. So it tended to be the secondary thing if people were training into another capital. But the other reason is that the carrier skill also translated into super carrier, whereas like the dreadnought skill doesn't translate into Titan. Right? Titan is its own bird, and super carriers were just an extension of carriers as far as the skill was concerned. When they came out with fax machines, remember originally they were going to have different skills
Yeah, their
for
own skill books.
right. They were going to have their own skill books, and then like people bitched and moaned, and they're like, "Oh, because of course they were splitting apart what was the carrier then into combat carrier and basically the triage or the force auxiliary or whatever, pieces of it." And people bitched, and they basically said, "Okay, you won't have to do that new skill to do this. We'll just extend it off of the carrier skill." So basically, carrier, you know, works for combat carriers, it works for force auxiliaries, it works for super carriers.
Yeah, so it has to be more.
So technically, it has to be more. Yeah, yeah,
Well, especially the super carrier part, right? That's super capital. Needs to
right,
be up there.
right.
It's very cheap if you compare it to Titan. Compare it, it's so
Well,
much
certainly.
cheaper.
Yeah, well, of course. I mean, the price of a Titan skill book, being what it is also relative to just what a Titan is worth in terms of
But that's kind of come down a bit, right? Because Titans are down to about, let's say, 50 billion, and super carriers are down to 12 billion or 15. Let's just say 15 billion to be easy. And the Titan has come down 50% in price, whereas the super carriers come down, well, maybe
it
40%.
really
It's not a big
hasn't
difference.
come down. I mean, it really hasn't come down a tremendous amount. I'm trying to think back to when I was building them. yeah, I mean, for the hull itself, I mean,
Mhm.
what was the value in their minerals? I mean, the value in minerals is probably about where they're selling for now. So, like, that higher bit that used to be profit and whatnot, was taken out. But I mean, there's a number of reasons why the prices of these things have come down. Number one, the amount of mining that was going on out there, which I suppose we might get to talking about, with the changes to the Rorqual and
Oh
whatnot.
yeah, yeah.
But also just in the way that you built these things, right? Number one, they take a while to build. Okay, so you've got time investment in just the build itself. Once you bake the actual ship, forget about the component.
Parts.
But you used to have to build these things in a pause where you could only build like two at a time max. In a pause or whatever the heck it was. Back then, it was kind of a whereas now you can like just build as many as you want in a in one of the new structures.
Yeah, and it,
But you should
yeah,
also remember that 50 billion, that's Dell prices. So you're not gonna find that outside of Dell, I think.
Right.
it's
Yeah.
40. Well, the actual build cost here says 42.5 billion, which actually sounds more correct. I don't know where that number comes from, but it should be a combination of all these parts here. But these parts have they have price points. They might have price points. Yeah. So this is a you're to buy all the raw parts, but you're not considering in the 42 billion cost the amount of money it'll cost to actually build it, like the job taxes, stuff like that, which is 350 million.
Yeah, I mean
I don't know.
it's kind of a secondary,
I put
sort of.
I put 50 billion out there just to be like, easy to compare to the super carrier, but I do think they're going for 45 billion right now, and I think
Yeah,
that
I mean,
is
What
Delve.
in Dell?
Yeah, in
Yeah,
Delve. No,
could
in
be.
Delve,
yeah,
I think it's even lower, isn't it?
I think the lowest I heard once being sold was like 42, maybe.
Oh, okay. It's basically a cost.
but anyways, back to the skill book stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, those are the big ones, right? Now, I haven't because I'm traveling right now, but I haven't gone out there to look. What sort of the second
Ah,
freaking
you fell
freaking phone
out.
call. No, my phone all of a sudden a call started to come in, so I had to
Oh,
like flip it off. Like the other skill books, like the different capital guns
yeah.
and fighters and things like that. Have you seen what the price changes there
Th-
have been?
Yeah, they all went up about 10%. There's some significant ones that I was going to point out. Fighters, I think, went up 40% or something. I'll pull those out right here. This is funny. I fat fingered fighters here, and I bought 50 of them. I only wanted to buy 5 because I don't want to sit on 50. Um, but those jumped up in price pretty good. Actually, the price difference will be here. So,
The
so
biggest one is the capital industrial ships, isn't it?
yeah, they went up 500. But let's do the fighters real quick. Here, fighters went up 250 million. So that was a lucky accident.
It,
They, yeah, I think they went up from. Can't tell with all the zeros. Yeah, 50 million up to 75 million. Sorry, 75 million. So it went up. What that is, about 33%. But yeah, and then the other fighters actually went up. They were 100, now they're 110. See, they were 100 to 110. So support fighters, light fighters, those all heavy fighters too, I believe, all the same. Let's go to heavies. Yeah, went from 100 million to 110 million. So the capital stuff. Let's see. I went ahead and bought all that stuff. I was about to buy the specializations, but those you have to fly around to collect. Anything that's specialized for a race, that is only available in the region of the race unless it's imported and usually at a high markup. So it behooves you to fly around to each empire to collect the specialized books.
yeah, like when this was first announced that this was coming down the pike, I ran out there and I filled in any capitals that my various capital pilots couldn't fly, because over time, it was like, okay, this guy may have been specialized in a Mar, or oh, then maybe he also could fly this and whatnot. And I'm not talking about kind of like my Dirk character, or other my secondary main, let's call it. But just sort of like my other ones, I'm just like, okay, I'll buy these now. They're going to go up. I might as well just have them on the shelf. I could plug them in if need be, or whatever. Along, closing out all of the various gun types, closing out all of the specializations, and yeah. So I flew down, to the different regions, and bought them at the local mom and pop schools.
Yeah. Mom and pop schools. Yeah, well, Capital Repair Systems looks like it went up to 200. It was at 175, it went up to 200. So just say these are all millions. Capital Shield emissions went up 50 million, from 100 million to 150. This is the big jump, as Amar was saying, and this I knew was going to be a big jump, so I did buy a few of those. How many did I buy?
Wait, did you actually buy those?
Oh yeah, I knew those were going to go up.
I got so lucky because I managed to get. I mean, people were buying them from MPC orders before and putting them up at increased rates. So you could, for the convenience of buying them in Jita, for example. I managed to get 10 of them at 600 million after the changes went into effect.
After the changes, that's good.
Yeah,
you caught that.
I think I literally made like 200 jumps in a leopard throughout entire Eve just to pick those up.
Okay, so you caught a lucky lag from that person.
Yep.
Yeah, because the prices changed when nobody knew they were going to change. From one day to the next, no warning. We knew it was going to happen this week. That's the best warning we had. And so if somebody had them listed at a markup because they were worth only $500 million, 500 million, marked up to 600 billion, the very next day, those things doubled in price. So that 600 million turns out to be a bargain for people who didn't buy it before. I bought 4 of them before just because I knew they would go up, but I didn't want to get stuck with a bunch of Rorqual things.
So again, what was the price change on Capital Industrial?
Capital Industrial went from 500 million, same as a carrier, but it went to 1 billion, whereas carriers only went to 600 million.
Wow, yeah, that is pretty stiff.
Yeah, doubled in price.
Yeah, and I'm thinking those are the most interesting ones, together with the Dreads, actually.
Yeah.
I did manage to pick. That was also quite weird because for some reason someone put up 100 Dread skill books in Jita at 103 million apiece after the changes went into effect. And yes, I did buy those as well.
So yeah, good for you. Somebody was not paying attention because they sold them at a loss of what their potential income was. So the Dreadnoughts, they're all the same. So we'll just pick this one here. This is the Amar Dreadnought. It went up. It went from 100 million to 100. Oh, that's not right. Did it go up to 150 million? Yeah.
Yeah, 150.
That's not that big a deal for. I mean, it adds up, but.
I mean, they could probably increase those prices by a lot more, I think, because hasn't it been like, apart from the changes you two were talking about earlier, when they increased the Titans from 5 billion to 5.5, we've had the same cost for skill books, haven't we? Since basically 2003, kind of.
I don't know the extent of the changes. There were definitely skill book price hikes in the past. I don't know if it was only capital ships. Maybe when the faxes came out, there was a capital ship price change. That seemed to be about when it happened. Before that, I don't know.
I think it happened before that, but it's like, okay, so here they did, here they went and looked, because obviously we're talking about the big ticket things, right? We're talking about the ones that were already expensive and now are more expensive, and in some cases like twice as expensive when you talk about the Capital Industrial, which is really kind of funny given the changes that they're now making to the Rorqual. Is it going to be as in demand anyways? Because of that. But they also made some changes to ones further down the line, where it's like going from 10,000 to 20,000, or stuff like that.
Yeah, I think everything changed roughly 10%. There are some surprises in there. I haven't looked all the way down. Yeah, but it looks like some of
And
the really low
that's
skills.
the first time. That's the first time that I can recall that there had been changes, like further down the line. They
Yeah.
have had capital skill book changes in the past. As I want to say just as part of sort of proliferation of capitals as it went on. They made some changes a few years ago, but that was very targeted at that time, as opposed to being something where they were looking more broadly. But I would say that when you look at the changes in the capital skill books, that's the one where, for whatever reason, it was like, this one's up 50%, that one's up 10, this one's up 100%,
Mm.
very kind of specific based on the capital. Whereas, probably further down the line, they may have said, okay, everything in this group, take it from 30,000 to 60,000, or double it, or something along those lines.
So a couple questions here from chat, Dirk. I'll read them to you since you're driving. But it feels, Jack says, it feels like CCP adjusting for the price of inflation. And that's
It's not
yeah.
it's not so much inflation, because Eve itself really hasn't necessarily seen what we would like kind of normally consider in the real world inflation, so to speak. I think it's more compensating for the level of income that people are able to generate now, as opposed to in the past. I mean, and one would think that with more income coming into the game, right, that prices should have gone up. But due to a whole variety of other reasons, we've never truly seen actual monetary based inflation. We've seen price changes due to changes that they have made, but not inflation due to, higher demand and income and things like that.
But we've seen inflation as well. But it's quite hard to differentiate it from due to, I mean, at this moment it's very difficult because you have mineral prices going down while you still have a huge influx of ISK faucets entering the game. So they kind of offset. But I mean, you can just look at. I mean, this is very very simplified, of course. But PLEX prices is one point where you can see the inflation.
Yes. Yeah. I would say that Plex and maybe skill injectors, which are all tied to monetization and whatnot, are probably one of the only places that we've ever seen what we would consider to be true inflation, as opposed to, okay, them just making a change in something, thereby if they go out there and they make a change to where, I don't know, they introduce the Rorqual as a miner, and now people are mining a lot more than they used to. There's more supply on the market, and now prices of minerals go down as a result of that. That's not really, again, monetary based inflation, where, wow, there's a whole bunch of money flooding the market, and you know the prices are rising because there's more money out.
But I think you can see it to some extent on T2 modules now as well, unless I'm mistaken. But the Plex is the one that's really interesting because if you go back 10 years, Plex was going. They were called the 30-day pilot license back then, and they were going for, if I'm not mistaken, around 200 million back in
Yeah,
2009.
yeah, like
And
250, 300. Yeah.
yeah, and someone just put a post on Reddit with a screenshot of him trying to buy 500 Plex, and it was 1.95 billion. So that's a huge increase. And if they were to truly sort of adjust the skill books in line with how much more money is in the game, they could increase the cost by a lot more than they did.
Um, wow. Okay, so I was just looking at Plex because NN Quantum was saying that there's a little bit of inflation in Plex, and I didn't realize it had surged over the last few days. It is nearly 4 million per. I need 500 of these to buy a month of game time, so they add up. So if you're buying them at 400 million, I'm gonna do some napkin math, but I think that's about 2 billion ISK in game for a month. Quite a bit. That's twice what it was 2 months ago.
Do you
Hi,
remember
Killah
the
Bee.
discussions? Do you remember the discussions back in the day? Like, okay, so when Plex was first introduced, the old Plex, that a single Plex was 1 month of game time, right? Before they went to microplex, but and it was like it started off at like I don't know, somewhere around 300 million. Okay, like it was a little bit, it was a bit less when the GTCs and stuff were being sold, kind of out on the forums and things like that.
Game time
But when
cards
they
of GTCs.
yeah, when they actually put it on the market and introduced Plex, right? You now created an entirely new environment. A whole lot more people were involved in being able to buy these things, so the demand increased, and it started off somewhere around 300 million or something like that, and then it was like when it went to by the time it got to 400, people were like, oh my god, oh my god, and then like when it got to 600, people were freaking out, like and then like 800, and like you had people, and I've got articles out there that I wrote at the time about the instability of the Plex price and how it keeps going up and all this kind of stuff, and there were people, Plex are too damn high, and Dr. E talking on stage about it and all this kind of stuff, but it was like, this is just what's going to happen. I mean,
Yeah,
I'm
but
surprised at this point that it really hasn't gone much above. I mean, it's certainly not at its high point right now in terms of that what would now be the 500 plex, equal to 30 days of game time. It's not at the highest it ever was. Because there was a point there where it really had spiked up. But I'm surprised that it's kind of leveled out and reached sort of what I'll call an equilibrium up at up around these levels, and really isn't going up or down to any great degree.
are we talking about the same Plex?
Okay.
Because I think it's gone way high. If we look in just the last 6 months, uh, maybe here, um, it's gone up.
I think you can go back like God, it might be like 2 years now or something like that, where there was like a significant spike. And this is going to be the pre-skill injector time. Okay, the pre-skill injector time, when Plex was the only vehicle for somebody to take real money, buy Plex, and then sell it on the market.
Mm-hmm.
When that was the only vehicle for doing that, there was a different kind of there was a kind of a different mechanism going on, a different environment, in terms of the pricing. But now that you've got a couple of different options for that, it's sort of changed the behavior.
What I see is last summer and fall, the price kept getting hit by sales. So like actual sales in real life,
Yeah.
the people were buying it for cheaper and unloading it because they wanted the money. And so you see this really low stabilization down here for months at under 3 million per. And then once the company CCP sold itself, right? I wonder why the sales stopped. It just really climbed, and there's a lot of pressure on it. So it's continued to climb pretty steadily, and then right around, what do we call that? Basically around 2 months ago, 2.5 months ago, it's really started to march its way up. And now in the last, 40 days, the 30 day, it has
Yeah,
stabilized,
I
but
I don't have access. I don't have access to the chart that
yeah.
would
Well, let me just tell you, the number is
go back in time.
3.65 up to 3.9. That's a pretty steady climb for the last 30 days. It surprised me it was at 3.9. I didn't know that.
Right. No. And what I'm saying is that to go back and be able to be able to look at it back before they went to microplex, back when it was 1 point something billion isk just for one plex, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, and then be able to translate that into what became the microplex, and be able to look at the longer term. I mean, it may be that it's back up, it's back up or higher. I'm trying to remember
Yeah.
now.
I don't remember it being this high. It seems to be at kind of a red level highs.
How much total is 500 of them?
Close to 2 billion, 1.95 at the moment.
Yeah,
1.95. Okay, yeah, then that's definitely higher. Yeah.
yeah.
But I
Okay,
mean, it's gonna keep on going up as well. We will reach 4 million quite soon.
that's pretty shocking. Unfortunately, I sold all those stockpiles while it was climbing up. So, a lesson to you: you never know when it's going to stop. So always have a little something. Okay,
Oh,
so
that's that's why I mean, and even back during the climb, from 300 on up, right? It was always Plex is the place to park money. It is. I mean, a lot of people said it was gold. I used to call it. I used to say it was more like platinum because it had a use besides something that was just a shiny object. It also it had all these other uses. At the time, multiple character training and all of these different things that you could buy with Plex. But it was definitely one of those things where it was like, look, this is where you park it. This is a storage of wealth
yeah,
for people who, I mean, because it's the one thing that doesn't really change in terms of they don't take away demand for it. They've only added demand to it over time, the uses for it. Whereas you can sit there and go, well, I'm going to put all my wealth into titanium. And next thing you know, they make a change to mining or they make a change to the uses of a mineral or anything like that. And it completely blows out the bottom of it.
any, yeah. Go ahead.
Sorry,
Just say
it was that me.
anything in the game. Sorry, anything in the game is subject to rules changes, whereas Plex is attached to real life and is less subject to rules changes.
Well, it's less subject. It's less subject to, or it's probably zero subject, to be quite honest, to anything that would have a downside to it. Like they're not going to nerf the uses of Plex. They're only going to expand the uses of Plex. Whereas they may nerf something in the game that has a knock-on effect to the price of any other object in the game.
Yeah. And Quantum makes a
The,
good point. Last thing, and then Aymar, you can go.
yeah,
Quantum
sure.
makes a good point that CCP can have sales. That does affect the supply. So price goes down when supply comes down. And they even said that CCP said we have ways of making because people were saying Plex is too high. I want to pay for my game with in-game money, but you're making it too hard. It takes too many hours to earn the money to play for free, basically. And they were saying like, well, we have an area that we would like to see it at, or I don't know if they said that, but they said we have ways of making sure the market doesn't overheat, because there was some speculation that people were manipulating the market way too high for people to play in order to be destructive towards the game. I think that was Iron Bank 1 was rumored to be manipulating Plex to make it skyrocket so that people wouldn't be able to play for free and would leave the game because he was pissed off. That was a scandal back then. Anyway,
No, I
Amar.
think, yeah, I think they did say actually that they. This was way back when they did say that they had a price range in mind for Plex where they find it to be healthy for the game, both in terms of being able to for players to be able to Plex their accounts, as well as having the incentive for people to actually buy the Plex. But the thing is, those things that CCP they can do things to have an impact on the Plex market, but the Plex market is a beast of its own almost. So it's very much driven by the player base, the demand, the supply, and all those normal things you see in an economy and in a market. One thing that's happening at the moment that could have an effect on Plex prices is the balance change that just was announced, which will have an impact on what seems to be ratting, which is one of the main, well, the main is faucet at the moment, and as well as Rorqual mining. So for the first time, we might actually see stuff, not for the first time, but in a long time, we might see things changing in the game that could actually have an impact on the Plex prices.
Why do you think that?
Well, I mean, if you look at it, from what I understand, to my limited knowledge, the changes are making ratting in nullsec still very much viable. It's still very much worthwhile doing, but it's not going to be as worthwhile doing as before. Partially due to what's it called, the NSA, I think. The module that basically lets you lock onto targets very quickly in a carrier, super carrier.
Yeah.
The
That's
network
been
sensor.
changed. Yeah, that's been changed so you can't actually warp out while you have that active. So that introduces a very high risk during ratting. Well, if you do get caught, then you usually lose a ship, of course. So that basically means that people will maybe be less likely to do super ratting, for example. They could also, I think it was it Arif on the forums? No, Arif? Shit, I
Yep.
forgot the name.
I don't know if that's him, but yeah.
Yeah, he mentioned that people could but they could replace the NSA and use sensor pieces instead in order to actually still make it a viable option to do super ratting with. But that will decrease the ISK per hour, or the ticks you get from doing the ratting. So those will directly have an impact on how much ISK is going into the economy. And obviously, if we reduce the amount of ISK people are actively getting from ratting, basically the inflation of money in E, that will have an impact on PLEX prices as well. The VNI change is also quite interesting because a lot of people are using VNIs to rat in nullsec, not to mention bots. I think it's quite widely known that a lot of VNIs are being used by bots, unfortunately. So depending on how that turns out, that could have a huge impact as well on PLEX prices, I think. But I've said it many times before. I think PLEX prices were catching up. I think we had an artificial effect on the PLEX prices due to the sales you just mentioned during the previous year that sort of kept them down, because we've seen a huge influx in terms of the amount of ISK players are making in the game, and the PLEX price didn't really catch up to that. And I think we're just now starting to see what might become eventually an equilibrium in terms of PLEX prices.
So
Well,
networks.
on top of it, I mean, I think you also had a kind of reduction in players. So I mean, look, there are a lot of things that when they're. I mean, one of the things that they didn't have a price. Okay, there was never a price that they thought was the right price. Okay, and even when you go back to Doctor E and the Eve Central Bank and all this kind of stuff, when I think we had a better eye on the economics of Plex at that time. His concern was never how high is it. His concern was the stability of the price over time. That he didn't want there to be, things going on out there that were fundamentally leading to massive explosions or the potential for massive downside for Plex. He wanted it to have stable price increases, which is kind of in line with what you would think kind of like, a central bank mentality would be in terms of stable prices, right? Not that you don't have any inflation at all, or deflation, but that whatever it is, it's just a stable kind of movement.
So the changes that are being talked about right now are the proposed changes in the future. They're not in the game yet. That's why if you look at the description for the capital sensor array, there's no change from what it was before. It doesn't mention anything about not being able to be used while moving. So
No, that's coming in April.
yeah, let me bring those changes up. We can
That,
just start talking about those. Killah Bee can start talking too. These are the patch notes that just came out. Take me a second to find them. I thought I had them open. Amsterdam's coming up really soon.
yeah, yeah. Well, it's not patch notes, right? These are proposed changes related to balance that was in the dev blog, related to balance that are coming in the April thing.
Spring balance, they call it.
Subject to, I guess, feedback and whatever.
All right, let's go through them. Okay, so essentially it's a capital rebalance. Let's start with force auxiliaries. Yeah, I just read this the other day. And they start talking about this diminishing returns on reps.
That's been something that has been talked about for quite some time now. Yeah, it goes back to the whole idea of you can basically just have this stuff out there that's unkillable because you just bring so many so many apostles, right? That it's like you just can't kill anything, out there in a lot, in a lot of these circumstances, right? And one of the solutions for it, I want to say at the high level, was find a way of, whether it be stacking penalties, which we're all used to stacking penalties in other areas and things like that. Um, I I think that the way that they went about it with this diminishing returns sort of thing, that's not just your standard, stacking penalty like we know of it. It seems good. I mean, it seems like, it's pretty well thought out. It definitely impacts capital, because this impacts both capital and subcapital reps, but it is much more targeted at the capital side of the equation, with a more limited a more limited impact on subcaps.
Hey, Killah Bee, are you still here?
Yep.
And what can you tell us about this change, and maybe even how it came about? What can you tell us about it in general?
Oh yeah, it's not necessarily just a capital thing, it's also subcaps, although I don't think it'll change anything on the subcap level, to be honest. The way the diminishing returns are set up right now, you basically, yeah, I don't think there will be any difference in subcapital meta coming out of this. And it is also not really aimed at subcaps that much. It's mostly aimed at facts. And the whole point was that we were trying to come up with a solution how to, sort of mix up the meta a bit. Because as of right now, if at a certain point there is enough facts on grid that anything like a super or titan becomes unkillable. Period, unless it's being the devolleyed, which is, a different scenario. Saw some very nice examples of that over the last couple of years. We've had the Navula Dread Bomb on my Vanquisher in 2017. We've had the Dread Bomb of NC and PL onto the TAS Super Cap fleet. I think that was late 2017 or something like that, or early 2018, I can't remember. Mm-hmm. And then we've had a bunch of the test Dread Bombs against Horde and NCNPL when during the recent Oigenin deployment of test. And all these Dread Bombs have failed because they were jumping into a scenario where the Super Cap fleet was already prepared for a Dread Bomb of some sort. And we were trying to come up with a solution on how to sort of make sure that if somebody drops, goes through the effort of dropping 300 dreads or whatever, you can still kill stuff. Now, how they decided to fix this, or how they decided to approach this with the diminishing returns, I think is very interesting. Although it's been causing, and it's just been announced yesterday to the public, and it's been causing me and a lot of other people already a lot of headaches. So I'm a bit cautious, I guess. I'm generally in favor of change, so I want to say that my general attitude is I do like the game changing more often rather than not at all. So even if this turns out to be a change that doesn't really do what they are hoping it to do, I think it could still be fun for a period of time until they do something about it. Basically, what these changes mean right now, I'm really kind of breaking it down. You can theory craft it all you want if you're into that kind of stuff, but it's not my it's not what I do. I have people do that for me, and then I tell them, give me a TLDR, and that's what they do. So basically, at the end of the day, now, if these diminishing return changes come in, as they stand on the paper right now, it will basically mean that at a certain amount of dreads, you're basically guaranteed to kill something. If you do it right, of course. There's still in 0-0, there's still the opportunity to boson the enemy dread fleet, for example. It's a large AoE doomsday that will, if done right, with 3 titans, you could basically wipe out an entire dread fleet. And obviously, it also comes down to how many supers and titans does the defender. I'm gonna use attacker for the dread bomb and defender for the super cap fleet. How many supers and titans does the defender have? Because if you're able to kill enough dreads, while your tank is holding on whatever they're primarying, then they're still not going to kill anything. But we've had some people run some numbers, and basically when you drop 200 dreads on somebody with, let's say, 50 titans and something like 60, 70 facts, you're pretty much guaranteed to kill at least 2 titans, maybe more if you do it really well. So that's basically what things would look like right now. That is assuming, again, there's obviously a lot of moving parts in a dread bomb like this. You can't really break it down like that. It'll never really go down like this. But just looking at the numbers, this is what it would be like roughly. Which I think is good. Like I like the idea of somebody, it's incredibly frustrating if you drop 300 dreads on somebody and all you manage to kill is a bunch of facts, because the defender manages to get a whole bunch of facts on grid and you're basically incapable of killing any super or titan, and it's just not very fun. I think it'd be nice, to see somebody dropping 200, 300 dreads and getting some titan kills in return.
Yeah. Well, how will this change the makeup of capital fleets in general? Will you call for as many facts as before?
You want to reship. You always want to stay at the rep cap. So it comes down. Obviously, it's diminishing return, so there's no real cap. But yeah, at a certain amount of facts, it starts becoming very insignificant. So basically, you would always want to maintain that maximum amount of facts that's efficient, basically. So I would still call for at least twice whatever that amount might be. But I think there would be a shift towards more dreads again as well.
Yeah.
In larger battles as well. Yeah.
Oh, that's what I was thinking.
This really comes down to, and this is some of the main concerns that, for example, Vily made a post on the official forums actually yesterday, where he raised his concerns about the diminishing returns, and it's a valid point. There's a lot of people that there's a couple of people that think that it'll just, instead of generating more debt, supers, titans, whatever capitals, it'll just discourage super cap FCs from using their super fleet altogether, because the FCs in charge of super cap fleets tend to be very conservative with them. It's just the way we play at that point. And he's very concerned that, some people are just not going to take fights because they're like, oh, well, if we take this fight, they might be able to kill 3 or 4 of our titans. That's not something I'm comfortable with, so I'm just not going to engage at all, right? So there is some valid concerns about the whole diminishing returns thing out there, but I'm very much a wait and see guy. So I think unless there's some really major backlash towards this coming, I think we will see those changes. And if those changes hit the server, then it'll just be all the 0-0 alliances adapting, and pretty much everybody adapting that uses capitals, and then we'll just have to wait and see what happens.
Yeah. Well, as you said earlier, and I thought so too immediately when you talked about the dread bomb situation, that this will popularize dreads even more so than before. By the way, I heard Naglfar is the new sexy dreadnought. Am I wrong?
Naglfar has always been like right now, or like ever since the Citadel patch, the dreadnought meta has been Revelations and Naglfars, and nothing's going to change about that. I think maybe Naglfars will be better than Revelations now. Maybe they will swap the number 1 and 2 spot, but yeah, we'll have to see.
Now, Matterall, are you bringing up that Naglfar thing because of something out there?
Yes.
I read somebody talking about having read something about Elo talking about something on a SoundCloud, or like there was some sort of NDA breach or something.
Yeah, his state of the alliance was leaked. The audio was and stuff, and they also listed out all the things that were said. It was just something you do internally to keep your guys up to speed, but it got leaked out into public, and he said there that they were gonna make sure you're ready to go in Naglfars. And so I thought, that must be the new sexy. Actually, he goes as far as to say that's the new sexy.
Yeah, and there were people out there speculating about whether or not there was some change, either coming or whatever that would make that, and I don't know. I don't know that there's nothing we've seen.
Well,
We've been
with the
using them for a
data we
while.
have right now, it very much looks like dual tanking, because I've been asked these questions like 3 or 4 times yesterday, and I went to Fozzy, asked him. Basically, the question I was asked is, are shield and armor reps going to be calculated with the same diminishing return, or is it separate diminishing returns for shield, armor, and so on? And the answer from Fozzy that I got, that he told me I was allowed to tell everyone, is that shield, armor, and capacitor all have separate diminishing returns, basically. And that will probably mean that dual tank titans are going to be pretty standard in 0-0 in the large scale. So that'll probably mean that you will see shield hardness on armor titans, and you will see armor hardness on shield titans, just because that way you can more efficiently you can basically use the full efficiency of the shield diminishing returns, and then you get to use the full diminishing return efficiency, whatever, on armor as well. And Ragnaroks, for example, are actually pretty good if you dual tank them. Generally, Minmata ships are pretty good if you dual tank them. Yeah. I mean, maybe, and this is very much speculation, but maybe Ragnaroks will actually become a more prominent Titan than they are right now. And I think we will see shield hardness on avatars and Erebuses as well.
But now, I mean, when you're talking about Titans, I mean, like you're talking about dual tanking them. Aren't you basically just saying, okay, these are nothing but doomsday weapons at that point?
No, this has nothing to do with dual doomsdays. It has something to do with getting the maximum amount of repairs available to you onto your Titan. Because if you, let's say the cap is 50 fags, right? If you have a certain amount of armor tank and you don't tank your shields at all, you drop 50 armor fags in, and then that's it. Like, that's all the rep you're gonna get on your armor. But if you also put some shield tank on your Titan, and you can drop 50 Minokawas on top of that, or maybe just have shield reps on your Apostles, then you get the full possible repair out of your shield, and you get the full possible repair out of your armor, and it can actually be significant as well in something like a dread bomb scenario. It could be able to, that it'll be not that big. I think it'll be like you will be able to tank another 5, maybe 10 dreads or something when you dual tank a bus, but I haven't looked at the numbers. I might be completely wrong. Maybe it's way more. I would have to talk to some theory crafters about that, but basically it can be significant, and it's not about the doomsdays that much.
Well, no. The reason I was bringing up the doomsday is because if you're dual tanking, then obviously you're giving up your use of either your mids or your lows for other offensive.
You don't really need mids or lows for anything. I mean, shield titans only use lows for like maybe cap mods or fucking damage mods or whatever. And mid slot, like if you're in a capital fight, you don't really need that many mid slots. Even in like a boss, like to hit a dread with your long range guns or whatever, you don't need a tracking computer. It'll change Horde Titans, but Horde Titans were hit anyways by the 50% damage reduction. And yeah, if the default fit for Titans is dual tank, then you can't really drop on a Horde. Like if you drop Horde Titans, which you can still do obviously, because 100 Horde Titans, even with half the damage, are still going to destroy any subcap fleet, right? So it is not like. But then if you decide, okay, I'm going to drop those Horde Titans, you will have to make them, you will have to sacrifice some of your tank in the mids, for example, for an armor titan to fit something like tracking computers. And in that case, it becomes more vulnerable to a dread bomb. But I also think that's good. You're basically trading, okay, now I'm going to jump in my titans to wipe out the subcap fleet, but you make it more vulnerable to a dread bomb.
So those are HAW Titans are HAW, and those are high angle weaponry. And they're used for bigger ships, capital ships, to be able to target and shoot smaller ships. Just so you know. All right, so.
Well, I mean, since we kind of diverted over there, Killah, what do you see about the use of HAW Titans at this point? I mean, is it still a thing, or does that meta shift?
It'll still be a thing after the changes, yes, I think. Because if you have enough titans, like you still like, so right now, for example, now granted this is a vanquisher, so it does a bit more damage than a regular boss, but I've Hall guns fit right now, and I do with Void, I do 4,600 DPS. So after the changes, that's going to be 2.3k DPS. That's still a lot of damage applied to a subcap. If you drop Horde Titans on something like a Battleship fleet or a Ferox fleet or whatever, they're still going to die very quickly. Just not as quickly. So yeah, I think Horde Titans will still be viable after the changes. They will just not be as oppressive as they are right now, which is why we asked for that change in the first place.
How many of these changes have to do with the ability of people to use super capitals to generate money fighting NPCs?
Not necessarily motivated by it at all. Like at least I can tell you from the CSM point of view, we did not bring up any of these changes aimed at PvE income. Especially the Titan change doesn't really do anything about Titans ratting. Titans don't really use their guns to rat, not a lot anyways. You just use your boson, and that hasn't changed at all. Super carriers, yeah, I don't know honestly. Like the whole super carrier fighter thing didn't really come directly out of the CSM summit. That was discussed a bit after, but yeah. I wouldn't say it's motivated by PvE, but the carrier nerf or the application nerf obviously, I think, does hit the carrier super carrier rating a bunch.
Might be joined by Vily in a minute.
He's already here.
Oh, good. Hey, Vily. So,
how are you doing, man?
Good, man. We heard you wrote something up and posted it on the forums.
I did. I'm gonna put it to Reddit here later today after I do a little more grammatical fixing. But basically, all I was saying regarding, I don't know, it's like post 708 in the thread or something, is basically like, I think the majority of the things they've done in this update are really good. I just think they need to tweak the capital nerf diminishing returns, and I personally don't see why they're going after ice mining. Those are the only two real points I had of any real relevance.
Ice mining doesn't make any sense to me either. It's already really niche and like sort of.
You're already dealing with a resource that's extremely scarce, right? Because ice belts are only in specific systems. It's like, I honestly think they should buff it a little, because now you're competing for a very limited resource, right? It gives value to like one system per. Like, is there even one per constellation? I don't think so.
Is it a way of making travel more expensive?
Well, it does have that effect if you nerf ice mining. Yeah. But I personally think they should make travel less expensive in terms of isotopes, just because isotopes are used in so many.
Yeah, look, the price of isotopes hasn't been affected yet. I guess these changes aren't here, but at least the knowledge of the changes are. These aren't final, are they? At this point? Or are they being discussed?
They're not final. It's basically a dev block they posted, and we've had dev blocks in the past where something they've posted in them has created a huge like outburst of, you know, negative feedback or whatever, and then they changed something about it. But the overall feedback about this dev block is pretty positive. Like I said, the overall feedback, and I guess Vily agrees, most of the stuff they're changing in there is actually pretty good. It's just a couple of things that are causing some headaches here and there. Maybe we can tweak those a bit, but yeah, the overall feedback's looking pretty good.
Okay.
Well, it's like the hit to ice mining just looks like it was okay. We're nerfing mining. Oh yeah, and this over here to the because we're talking about the ice mining duration for excavation.
Yeah, but it's effectively like a mining yield nerf. It's almost identical the way it works. So, but once again, ice mining is so niche and so. Like, it's such a scarce resource. Like, I've heard enough people complaining about like the limited number of ice belts before. To me there seems no reason you would want to nerf ice mining. Like, it gives people something to compete over. That's what we want.
Right. Yeah, and that was the point I was making. Is it looks like they were just doing a hit to the Rorqual mining, and that was just the other thing that the Rorqual can do, right? So whether it needs to be there or not, I think it was more like they just did it because. My bigger question on the Rorqual is, I swear if they could go back in time, the Rorqual would not mine. But
wait, let's talk about the Rorqual in a second. I want to jump next to carriers, because that was a big deal. This is where I think a lot of people that I heard from were like, whoa, how's this going to shake out? Because the carriers are getting a damage nerf, right?
Well, they're getting an application nerf, not a damage nerf.
Essentially, yeah. Go ahead.
But that will translate into a damage nerf.
Yeah, of course. Like it will translate into carriers applying less damage, so it'll effectively be less damage on smaller targets. But yeah, they are.
And the smaller targets, if you PvP aside, are the NPC rats, right? Those are small targets compared to carriers.
Some of the frigates in the sides are small targets. Yes, there's a lot of battleships in havens as well, or sanctums, which I think battleships you will be hitting just fine, but frigates might be a problem, or will die a bit slower than they are now. I guess you can compensate this by just fitting a bunch of omnis, by the way. But you know, you're obviously going to sacrifice something for it.
Okay, so you have to pay and you have to sacrifice something for it. Good point. So this other thing here is on the AMR brought up the network sensor array disallowing ships to warp when it's active. The network sensor array is used to more quickly access targets. Is that what it's used for? Yeah.
Yep, that's basically just a change. So the whole point of that is basically just making carrier rating, super carrier rating more risky. Now, obviously, if you play smart, it's still safe. There's a lot of people that aren't playing smart. One sec.
So maybe they'll get caught.
So like what he's saying is that basically because the NSA doesn't, you have to wait for it to turn off before you can go into warp. It creates a 30 to it creates in theory a 60 to 5-second window where you're unable to warp at the end of a site, or when somebody comes into local and you would normally be like, oh fuck, hostile, neutral and local, I'm warp to safe, right? So it gives the hunters a small window yes. to catch them, which I actually think it's a great idea. Like it's one of the better. I think it's arguably the best change in the whole update because it's a very balanced change. It will reward people who are still paying attention, but it will punish people who don't.
And bots.
Oh Jesus, the way it's just absolutely gonna terrorize bots.
Yeah, that's also a big motivation behind that specific change is it'll really mess with bots or make it harder for the botters in a way. Because you can't just initiate warp the second somebody enters local anymore. You have to turn off the NSA first and stuff like that. So, yeah.
Or don't use it. I mean, if you don't want that in a
or don't use it, that's fine. Yeah, you could fit CBOs, but then you lose mid slots, which you can't. If you fit CBOs to get the same lock speed, then you can't fit omnis to have the same damage application. So, it's a trade-off.
Well, it should be noted, like the NSA doesn't just increase your lock speed; it increases the sensor strength of your fighters, and that is a very relevant thing as well.
Yep.
Is that control range?
Well, it also does control range as well, but like more so, what I was leaning at is like your fighters are very, very jammable without an NSA.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
So a lot of the rats will just like basically permajam your fighters if they're not. You have no NSA.
Oh, interesting.
I'm wondering about, because a lot of people have been talking about the NSA change from a PvE perspective, but it will have some implications in terms of PvP as well, won't it?
Not really.
I mean, because you're going to reduce, if you don't fit an NSA, you will have...
Everybody's just going to fit an
NSA.
There's zero reason you would not fit an NSA in a PvP situation.
So you're going to do that regardless? Even if you do have those 60 seconds where you...
Unless you're talking about, like, meme drop line warp supers. Like, what do they call them? Nano supers? I don't know what exactly they're called. Like, the guys that jump in, try to volley you, and then warp away. I mean, it'll nerf them a little bit because they'll have to use CBOs instead of an NSA, but...
yeah, because it makes me think
they'll be the only ones not...
That guy who was doing... who got, what was it, 1,000 kill marks? Well, he didn't get 1,000 kill marks, he got 999, didn't he? But the guy who was basically griefing people in a low-sec system, sitting on some sort of combat sites. And, I mean, that guy can't really do that anymore, can he?
He can still try, but it'll end badly for him.
There'll be some, there always is some amount of people who are aware and adapt early will have an advantage over people who don't really pay attention to things that have changed until a few weeks later. There's always a lag time of people trying to figure it out and even testing to see how much it affects them. So I expect that if things go as indicated here, you'll see a couple ticks up of carriers dying in this kind of ratting situations or whatever. But it'll adjust. It always does, and maybe things will happen that we don't even know about. And these aren't even the actual changes. These are proposed changes that they want feedback on, so they may modify some things. Billy said he had a problem with the ice mining, that it was already already nerfed too much, I guess. And maybe they will take that part of it out. Is there...
Well, just because I bring something up doesn't mean TCP is going to change it. But, you know, I like to think at least that I'm pretty open to change or whatever. My only concern is the level of diminishing returns on the fax reps is very, very restrictive, and like especially at certain levels of the higher end warfare, it becomes prohibitively dangerous. Like, you know, I was having a discussion last night with some people about like just what a 300-man dread bomb turns into, and you know, some people are like, oh, I'm okay losing 5 or 10 titans for 300 dreads, and I'm like, yeah, are you okay losing 10 or 20 for 400 dreads and so on? And it just becomes a very, very difficult mathematical and theoretical situation.
You think it'll cause people to be more risk averse and maybe take less fights?
100%.
Yeah.
Like the reality is, all of the major super cap commanders and groups and blocks in EVE are highly risk averse, because to replace a super capital force is it's an incredible endeavor. It's an incredibly large project. Yeah, you can replace 3, 4, 5 titans, no problem. We can all do that. That's not an issue. You can replace 10 or 20 or 30, and you also have to maintain your fighting capability that whole time. It's very tricky. And if you get to the point where a 300-man dread bomb guarantees 5 to 10 titan kills, that's a dangerous proposition to me.
And now you get less insurance when those ships die, right? Because the capital ship insurance rates have changed. They're going down.
Well, that's going to affect the dread bomb more than the super cap and titan pilots, because super cap and titan insurance was a joke already. So
yeah, nobody cared about
doesn't
that.
really matter. Yeah, the dread bomb is going to lose more than before.
Yeah, absolutely. But if it's also guaranteed to kill massively more, then it's a dread bomb.
People will be fine with it.
Yeah.
So that's a 33% drop for a dreadnought.
50, I believe.
Does it say? I didn't.
Yeah, it's right
It's
here.
50 and 33 respectively. So it's either 50 for supers or 33 for caps. If it's only 33 for regular caps, it's almost nothing.
Yeah, standard capital ships. I don't know if that's a dread or not. The 50% is for super carriers.
Yes.
Okay, so if it's only a 1/3 drop in insurance, then dreads aren't even much.
Yeah, it's a 1/3 drop in insurance for dreads and carriers and things like that, and the 50%. But I mean, does anybody even give a crap about the 50% drop in supers? Like,
no.
do people?
I don't know why they did that to begin with, because I think it has something to do with the scaling. It's just by ship class, but yeah, because super carriers and titans insurance didn't matter before.
I'm not tracking anyone at all that's ever insured a super carrier.
Yeah, seriously,
nobody does that. Anyways, I gotta go, guys. I'm gonna head to work. I'll see you all.
Thanks for stopping in.
Yep.
So
docking in stations on your lunch break.
Yeah. The super carriers, that means titans and actual super carriers, do not get insured. They're too expensive. But the dreadnoughts do. So
the thing is with insurance is that it expires after 3 months, right? There's no situation where you're expecting to lose your super carrier this month or your titan this month, right? Like, you just don't be like, even if you're jumping into a truly big super cap battle,
yeah,
you're not like, oh, I better insure my titan and spend 3 or 4 bill because this is the week I'm gonna die. It just, even in those big battles where we had 200 titans per side, like, what percentage of the titans died, right? 5, 10%?
Yeah, good point. And there was a thing that was starting to happen.
I don't think the payouts even covered your mods.
Yeah, probably not. Fitting for a Titan these days is what, 15 billion, 10 to 15?
I believe we reimburse Titans at hull plus 13 bill. So
13?
And that's not like a full fit. That's like a standard whatever. Like, the thing is, most Titans have like a variety of extra shit in their hold. Like, they have 3 sets of guns, they have the DDs, they have the rigs, they have usually at least 2 of the multi-hardeners, either A-type invulns or A-type ENMs. It's
The
10,
big
13.
package.
I mean, Vily, do you the types of groups that are out there dropping dread bombs? Do you see a 33% reduction in the insurance payout, like affecting any of that?
No,
Yeah, exactly.
it wouldn't even make them hesitate. Like anybody who builds dreads in the hundreds is not going to even like flinch at like. To be honest, we didn't even care about the insurance as it was. Like,
Yeah.
just you died in a dread. Here's a new dread. Jump back in. We'll deal with the insurance later, and it's never been a concern.
So, looking at the sub-capital balance updates, is there anything in there that caught your guys' attention?
The Korax power grid thing is pretty fucking awesome. I don't know about you, but like that's a pretty massive little thing for people who like to play the Korax.
I mean, based on what we've seen from sub cap rebalancing in the past, right? These were a lot of single line item type of rebalancing as opposed to kind of reshuffling of entire ships and things like that. So I mean, there were everything seemed like, oh, okay, that's good. Yeah, that's good because they were all one line item type things.
Yeah.
Well, it's actually funny because if you look at it, like they nerfed the Gila, which is the premier abyssal sight runner, by cutting its drone HP bonus. They nerfed the Navy Vexer, which is the premier bot chain, ratting in nullsec ship.
AFK Radar.
Yeah, AFK Radar. What was the other thing? I gotta pull up the patch.
Yeah.
There were some changes to the Ferox, and people were questioning whether or not that in any way, shape, or form changed the Ferox meta.
It does not.
You would know you call for Feroxes sometimes as a C.
Yeah, I literally have 1,300 of them now stockpiled in Brimmer, so like this doesn't affect anything in terms of Feroxes. They're slightly slower and they're slightly bigger in terms. So I mean, in theory, it'll make them a little bit easier to get hit by battleships, but they're still going to trade with battleships so effectively that nobody should be going up against Feroxes with battleships unless they have a really good plan to kill them.
Well, this is interesting because Ferox is used for PvP these days. There's a little bit of changes there. Probably won't have an effect. The Gila, as you were saying, is Abyssal Space, which is used to go through Abyssal Space. That's a pretty significant hit. Drone HP down.
I think next year I'm not going to be able to call it the Gila Gala because I'm not sure if Gilas will be as broadly used because the drones. I mean, you only got 2 drones out, right? They do get targeted by the NPCs and things like that. So it'll be interesting to see, whether or not the Gila drones can stand up the way they do, which is basically, just let them rip.
Yeah, I mean, it'll require abyssal runners basically to have a little more attention paid to their drones. I know when I did abyssal sites, my drones will get low, but not in the danger zone. So I think this would be a situation where it would be possible for them to get killed, but not if I'm paying attention enough. So.
And those are the right kind of changes, aren't they? When somebody can do something without paying attention, essentially AFKing the process, and it pays big money, then you got a problem in the case of the Gila and the Vexer. So if you have to pay more attention to it, now it's going to cost you attention span to earn that ISK, and it's going to slow down that faucet.
Yeah, listen, all like 9 or 10 of those subcap changes are good changes. The medium beam optimal increase is good, gives Vexers a little bit of a roll. Power grid increase on the Harbinger is really nice. It allows the Harbinger to maybe step up into a competitive role with the Ferox and Hurricane now. Maybe.
Love the Harbinger.
We'll have to see. The increase to the Abaddon damage, so it gets a 12.5% overall damage boost. That's pretty relevant, pretty good. So I mean, that puts the Abaddon at one of the premier battleships. So we'll see if Hellcats can maybe make a
comeback
resurgence.
Yeah.
I mean, Horde is already trying them, so this will definitely make them even a little bit better. I still don't know if they're necessarily meta enough yet, but it seems fine. Like giving the Cyclone more CPU. Like anytime you have a lot of these more unused ships, like the Cyclone or the Harbinger, it's almost always because of power grid and CPU limitations. You can't fit the necessary modules to make the ship work with like a more cookie cutter kind of fitting. I can't get a full set of 425 autocannons on my Cyclone because it doesn't have enough CPU, or I can't fit a shield booster plus whatever I want on. Like, those are like the premier problems those kind of ships have, because it just doesn't work without the extra grid or CPU. You have to start fitting a coprocessor in the lows kind of thing, and then you're compromising the fitting. So I think that's a great change. The Caracal Navy getting more drone bay into 25 M3. I mean, that means it gets a set of Hornets, which is good. The Caracal Navy is only used really in small gang stuff anyway, so that seems like a positive change to me. I mean,
Yeah.
all the subcat changes seem like, I don't want to say like overly like well thought out, because I think the Ferox nerf doesn't hit the key components it needs to, but they're all positive changes.
Yeah.
And just back to the Gila just real quick. I mean, one of the reasons why it got the kind of buffs that it did in terms of that 500% to drone hit points and things like that was the Gila could carry different drones and use different drones before, and multiples of them, and they switched it down to only really two mediums being the way to go with it. So they allowed those drones to be beefier in every way because there was only two of them.
It is funny though, the unintended consequence of this will be that it will make Gila fleets in 0-0 basically unusable, because your drones are so easy to smart. Because traditionally,
Yep.
like, Gilas weren't work like, you would just assist them to somebody and they'd get sent on a primary target. And even if you had a couple smart bombers set up, it would be very difficult to get the drones killed because you just have so much HP. But with the HP bonus going down to 250%, one or two smart bomb battleships will clear the whole wave of drones basically instantly.
Well, that's interesting.
And Gila fleets in 0-0 were very meta like a year or two ago, so they only kind of dropped that.
Yeah, I remember Nelly used to have Gila fleets all the time. This is why I love talking to experienced FCs. They can tell you all the insights on these little changes that they kind of look, little, but they make big differences. And by the way, I think the way that at least nullsec fleets, when you have a lot of people in these ships, sometimes they'll say, "Oh, put in a plug-in or an implant in your head to get a little more power, so that you can make squeeze this little fit into the ship." So they have to be careful that they have to overcome the implant's ability to fudge what can fit into a ship too. All right, the last big change, Rorquals.
Oh God.
Which is probably where I would guess that the majority of tiers are.
Oh yeah. I've read through the entire official forum thread about it, and there's a lot of salt in it.
I think the problem is that they don't do the nerfs effectively in stages enough. So like all three of the nerfs, the shield rep amount, panic duration amount, and the mining yield amount, they're three separate nerfs, right? And if they would have done one at a time, you would be in a much better situation to justify each individual one. I think everybody has recognized that the panic module is perhaps too long. Perhaps 6.5, 7 minutes is too much. But on the other hand, because they're also nerfing at the exact same time Rorqual's ability to tank on its own and its yield on its own, it creates this kind of like, anybody who's in a Rorqual's like, well, geez, I just got fucked, right? Like, versus if they would have happened in stages, it would have been a little more palpable, or palatable, I should say.
Yeah, and the skillbook just doubled in price. Skillbook's now $1 billion.
Yeah, exactly. At the same time, anybody wanting to get into it new, right, is going to pay up on the skill book. But I don't remember the last time they made a change. I think it had to do. Was it with the panic? Was it with the battle Rorquals or whatever? But in early 2017, okay, so we're going back a couple of years now. We went through a series of Rorqual nerfs, and then another semi-unrelated mining nerf at that time. But it's really been a couple of years since the Rorqual has been touched in such a way as to, people freaking out about, how much they can earn off of it, right? In terms of nerfing its ability to mine. It's been a couple of years, but in that time period when it was being nerfed, right? That was in that lead up to the late spring of mild discontent and everything that had happened there. Where there was also some nerfs to fighters for ratting and things like that. But it's been like a couple of years since they hit that thing in terms of the mining, which it feels like here they're trying to kind of throw a bit of discouragement out there into Rorqual mining again, just in general.
Yeah, trying to cool it off. Let's go through these 3 changes that Vily talked about. First one is a reduced booster shield amount. That's basically its tank. What can you tell us about that change? Is that the big change of these 3?
No, that's the smallest of the 3,
Okay.
and it would easily be. I don't want to say it's irrelevant, but how do I put it? It's a very minor change. It's the by far the least impactful of the 3.
I mean, you still get an insane tank on a Rorqual, even with that change.
Like all you're doing is reducing, the local tank from like, what are we gonna say on average, like 50k to like 35, 40k. Like we're talking an average, right? But like obviously your pimped tanks, you're still getting like 100k if you really want to push, the envelope. So it's not necessarily the big thing that people would like it to be.
Yeah, I mean,
sorry, good.
I was say if you're relying on your local reps, it's probably because nobody's coming to save you. I mean, really the thing with Rorquals out there, especially when they're mining in herds and everything, is the panic to allow for response fleet.
Right. Amar, you were going to say?
No, I mean it's just been absolutely ridiculous the amount of tank you could get from a Rorqual. I'm just surprised that we didn't see more Rorqual fleets doing PvP. I'm not sure if you've seen John B doing his sort of infamous Rorqual solo PvP roams, but I mean you could quite easily get 50k effective HP tanked every second on a Rorqual, and so you could basically tank an entire subcap fleet yourself. Well, not an entire, not 250 people, but like 20, 30 people. So it's been quite ridiculous. Just when you take everything into consideration, the amount of yield you will get from the Rorqual, together with that tank, which actually makes it a very good PvP ship even. And then, and the drone bay, I mean, it's been ridiculous, and it's still ridiculous even when they do this nerf.
So it's used in a couple of ways. One is as a grazer to harvest asteroids. The other way is it's used as tackle for capitals. Will the shield or the panic
that was one of the changes that they made, and I can't remember when that was. Was it a year ago or something like that? With the whole ability to what was it, point and.
Oh, they took away the ability to point while you're in panic, or.
Yeah, well, they took away that tackle aspect of.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I must have missed that. All right, so these 2 things. Then the second way is grazing on, harvesting rocks and stuff like that by yourself, right? Because the ship itself is sending out drones, so one person is controlling a harvesting apparatus. That is separate from its ability to boost for other people, which we'll talk about in a second. But in that respect, you have certain areas like Amar, you're in Theta Squad, right?
No, I'm not.
You're not? Oh, somebody said you were. So Theta Squad is basically, I believe it's a group that sits around waiting for Rorquals to get into trouble so they can go and rescue them. And
Theta Squad is like the goons, like premier. How would I call it? They're the guys that make lots of money and brag about it, kind of group in goons, is my understanding.
Okay. That may be different than the defense.
Well, also part of what they do is they sit around and wait to gank Rorquals, or not gank Rorquals, but gank the people trying to gank Rorquals and then smug. and they're generally pretty good about it, is my understanding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they have a limited.
They're the ones that are out there grinding. They're the ones that are out there grinding, but they've also got, hey guys, mutual defense here. If one of us gets, gets into it, we all go and save each other.
Sorry, Amar, I thought you were. I wasn't sure. You're in Imperium though, right?
No.
What?
Though,
Who are you?
It's a mystery. No, but I've had quite a few offers to join Imperium. Seems like nice guys as well.
I know you're an old player and you took a break. Where are you now?
I basically do. I have a corporation and we do high-sec stuff in Wormholes.
Oh, okay.
That's mostly it.
I'm totally wrong about your background. All right. Anyway, these changes here will reduce the amount of time it takes for people to come rescue you, as your shields will go down faster and your panic is now reduced by a minute or two. That won't really make a difference in a well-prepared area like, say,
so
Delve.
in Delve, in Esoteria, and in Tribute, it's going to make zero difference.
Yeah.
Like, in reality, probably. Unless you're dealing with a surprise 200-man, initiative or test bomber fleet, right? Like, every other fleet, it's like, whatever. But everywhere else in the galaxy, there is some relevancy to it, so...
What about this coupled with the fax repair changes?
They don't really intermix. Honestly.
No? Okay. And
Like, the fax repair changes are only really relevant once you start hitting, like, 10 plus fax, right? And at 10 plus fax, there's nothing that's, going to be killing your Rorquals that's going to be chewing through 10 faxes worth of reps.
So when you save a Rorqual, you're not dropping a ton of faxes, you're just...
Usually one well-tanked local master... Or we call them master race, which is our, like, pimp fit... or Minakawas. Like, one of those is usually enough to handle a Rorqual.
At least to save it while the enemy is killed off. Okay. Well, that's interesting. Okay, the excavator is also going to mine slower, including ice harvesting.
Yeah, I think one of the calculations I've seen out there is it's now dropping, Rorqual mining down to something like, and again, this has been measured in number of hulks since they gave Rorquals the ability to mine, right? And I think
used to be
when
6.
it first came out,
oh sorry,
I think when it first came out, it was at
how many
equivalent mining capability 5.
5. Okay.
And then it got nerfed a couple of times, and this is bringing it down to it looks like some estimates of about 1.8 to 2 or something like.
Oh wow. That's quite a big drop. I mean, I thought it used to be 6.
Well, hold on. It was 5. It was 5 when it first came out in, what was it, late 2016, early 2000. I think it was late 2016, and then they nerfed it back a bit in, I think, January, and then again I think in March of 2017, and I think it's been sitting where it is since that point. And it's good. I think it's going now from something like 2.5 down to 1.8 or 9 or something like that, is from what I can see.
You have to take into consideration as well that they are boosting or improving the boosts of the Rorqual as well. So when people are recalculating how many hulks does one Rorqual equal, they're also taking into consideration the increased boosts that those hulks will get with these changes as well.
Yeah, so like about 15%, right?
I can't remember the number now.
I think it's like 5%, and then you scale it up by the value of the mining boost, and it becomes like 15%, something like that.
Yeah, the tier 2 ones do get more, don't they?
So yeah, there is an offsetting buff in terms of the in terms of what you're getting from from the burst.
Yeah, overall, I don't like any of the Rorqual changes except for the shield, self booster change. Honestly, I think Panic was due for a nerf anyways, but to me the problem is this just pushes more people into the big blobs. And I don't think that is healthy for the game overall. You're just pushing
Yeah.
more people into Test. You're pushing more people into Goonswarm. You're pushing more people into Horde and Pandemic, Legion, NC Dot, whatever. People want to go where it's safe to mine, right? Nobody wants to lose their 10 billion as Rorqual. So if they know that the super capital umbrellas in areas A, B, C, D, or E are like 99% safe, and they know that the umbrellas in their home space is like only 85% safe, 15% versus 1% is one thing, but like when you actually compare it, it's like multiple hundreds of times more less safe, right? And it's a very unfortunate thing, because I would really love if there was a way where people could mine. I don't know how you could scale it differently, but I think you just have to accept the fact the way it is. I don't know.
So there's some discussion in chat, and Nathal, I think, asks, like, in frigates, how many frigates will it take to take down a Rorqual now?
Well, it depends what frigates you have and if you have nooning power.
Oh,
Like
so,
if you've got like what is it, Reykjavik, the precursor destroyer or whatever, the little fast one that does like 800 DPS, like 20 or 30 of those and a couple new chips, and you can tear Rorquals apart.
Yeah, I mean, you basically just have to go through, well, Eclipse 25,000 EHP being repaired every 6.
Well, the reality is it's got a 50k tank is usually what I say, if you assume no nooning power, but you need that kind of nooning power to make it struggle with those against the damage, I guess you could say.
But yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with Vily there that the changes that they're making here, probably do say to a Rorqual miner, you want to be Rorqual mining, in places that have that level of coverage, right? Overall, I mean, it looks to be another discouragement of what Rorqual mining is. The problem is that it is going to push it to those groups that are already mining vast quantities of minerals out there, right? And ice, where they have it. But let's just assume it's minerals that they're really going after here, because you know, I think they recognize that there is some issue out there, but definitely doesn't hurt the big players in the herd mining game as much as it does other players.
Well, that's from the safety perspective, isn't it? I mean, that's not talking about the yield.
Well, the funny thing is, because they lowered the yield, it actually helps the herd miners in a way that you don't really consider. Like, yes, they make less money, but the resource constraints, the fact that they're consuming a resource, they're actually consuming that resource now 20% slower, which means that in theory, that herd can now be 20% bigger to have just the same level of consumption as it currently does. You kind of get what I'm saying?
I do.
You scale up to make up for the inefficiencies.
Yeah, but I mean, that goes across the board, even though the big entities are going to have it easier to do that scaling up. But as it stands right now, it would hurt. I mean, looking at a total amount of mining being done, it would hurt the bigger entities more, just in sheer quantity.
Making boomers great again.
Like I said earlier, if you can take somebody and make them have to pay attention to the game, it completely kills it as a passive scalable income. If you have to pay attention to what your ship's doing, you can't control 3 or 4 of them as easily as one.
But that's the thing. Like, I choose to make income via Rorqual mining because I can put 6 Rorquals in a belt, stick my Nyx in the center of the belt, and I can set them on the rocks and like run around my house, go do laundry, whatever I need to do, and just walk by my computer every minute or two to make sure rats aren't killing my excavators, and I'm versus I remember when I used to super carry rat, where I'm literally I'm like going like Starcraft level APMs trying to make 300 mil versus with 6 works I'm making 500 or 600 mil an hour, right? So it's that scalability is an issue, but it isn't particularly changed by this situation.
Yeah. No, I was referring to the other thing.
The other thing they changed was they changed the size of excavators, which appears to be completely related to what if you're gonna die, stick them off into a mobile depot so that you don't A, lose your excavators or at least lose all of them or whatever, and B, because there are kill mails on excavators, you limit getting those kill mails. But the excavators are really the big pricey chunk of the total value of a Rorqual loss.
I actually forgot. Yeah, so there is actually a fourth nerf to Rorquals that we weren't talking about, which is the fact that if you die, you're going to lose at least 2 of your excavators. And to me, that seems like a perfectly fine nerf that's been due for a while, to be honest. I thought the fact you could save all your excavators has always been a little bit...
Yeah.
This is the one that people have been complaining most of in terms of the EU forums, at least. And I think that it's the combination as well. Because, yeah, it does bring more incentives to actually move. If you're on a Rorqual miner, it does bring more incentive to move into one of the big blocks. Because even though the panic button doesn't make that much of a difference, the nerf itself, but it does make some difference for a small alliance that doesn't have 1 or 2 minutes response time if someone gets tackled in a Rorqual, for example. And the same thing goes with the tank, which obviously means that you're going to need half the size of the fleet to kill a Rorqual as opposed to now. But the thing I think most people dislike the most about it is the fact that you do have that 20% yield decrease, which means, well, that pisses people off because they will make less ISK from the one Rorqual or several Rorquals they do have. But also, on top of that, the increased risk of actually losing quite a lot of money from those excavators, because that's a really big thing. Because basically you could save close to 5 billion worth of excavator drones by putting them into the mobile depot before. You can't do that anymore, because if you lose your Rorqual, you're going to lose at least 2 of them. So that's what people take into the calculation as well. Not just the reduced amount of minerals that we'll be mining, but also the increased risk of losing the ship. And when you do lose it, you will be guaranteed to lose 2 of those excavators, which does amount to quite a bit of money.
Yeah, and that's got to be in addition to already losing the Rorqual. Because if you don't lose the Rorqual, you won't lose anything.
I mean, so overall here, right? They have nerfed the income potential of the Rorqual. They have made it more susceptible to danger, and they have made it more susceptible to the loss of extra. Overall, obviously, overall it's a nerf. But I'm going to go back to overall, it is an attempt at discouraging the proliferation of Rorqual mining. And I really do wonder if they could go back in time, if they ever would have gone down this Rorqual path.
I don't think so, because Fozzie was saying, and it was really clear, you could tell by the way he even said it, that Rorqual was going to have its day. They were really going to make it nice for Rorqual for a while, because it had been so out of favor for so long. It's just a boosting ship that you would park, and nobody would actually ever play it, unless you were using it to create clones and the clone.
Well, it was a poor man's jump freighter. Yeah, I mean,
and that too.
Before I got a jump freighter, it was like I had a Rorqual first. I mean, because number one, it was dual use. Yes, it was my pause booster, and it was my hauler out in the belt to tractor in cans of ore that my exhumers were mining. But it was also a space truck. And then with the Phoebe change, they absolutely destroyed the space truck part of it.
Yeah.
But I mean, you also have to realize that this version of Rorquals, even with the nerfs back in 2017, is completely broken. I mean, it's so unbalanced that it's almost ridiculous. And I hate to say it, Vily, but the fact that you said that you had, 6 Rorquals and you were doing mining with the nicks in the belt and go do the laundry, that's not a good way to balance the way you make ISK in this game. I mean, that's
really. I don't disagree. I don't disagree with that. That's like my current setup that I personally do is I take 8 accounts, 6 of them in Rorquals. I put a Nix in the center, so if anybody shows up in the belt, the Nix with long range fighter bombers and a Siren and a Dromi will basically insta-frag it. And I put a Hulk in there to mine the Mercoxid. I have just mine on my own peacefully, and nobody bothers me, and I know that if I'm in trouble, obviously I'm Vily, I'm going to be able to broadcast and have 20 or 30 supers come save me if I need it, and I've never had to need that. So like the fact that when you put a Nix in the belt on your own, you're clearly saying you have a certain level of confidence in your ability to defend yourself that generally doesn't,
Yeah.
cause problems. But like, yeah,
Well,
as I say, like, it's been great for my housework because I get my laundry done, I do some cooking, like,
Feel
as long as I
productive.
walk by my computer every minute or two, it's it's good. But you're obviously right. That's not how you should be making money.
yeah.
But
So I mean, the balance changes were overdue, but I think
the thing is, this
the,
didn't change any of that, though.
It's
Is the
still gonna
thing. Like,
happen.
it literally just means I make 20% less money. Like, but at the same time, everybody else is making 20% less money. So, or
yeah. So I
20%
mean,
less
I
ores. So
think
my ore is worth a little bit more.
they do miss the mark in terms of actually getting to the core problem of Rorquals, I guess. And what really just happens is that they nerf the amount of risk you get from doing that type of stuff. So people will keep on doing it. That's not the reactions you see maybe on the forums, because people are basically saying that it's completely worthless mining in a Rorqual now, and that's probably just people who are severely pissed off because I think they've been doing it for 2 years now. They are quite comfortable doing it that way and getting that amount of risk from it. So maybe that's why people are quite pissed off, quite a few. But
Well,
go
sorry,
ahead.
I think you've got two different brands of people out there. You got the people who number one, always push back on a nerf to whatever it is they're doing anyways. So even just a 20%, even if all there was here in the Rorqual nerf, right, was a 20% reduction in mining capability, you would have everybody out there across the board, regardless of what organization they're part of or anything, that would push back on that. But then you probably also have the voices out there who are not the people sitting under a super cap umbrella, who are saying, "You've hit me on this, you've hit me on the defense side. I really have to question whether putting this amount of value out in the field continues to be worth it." They're the ones that have probably a larger realistic gripe, whereas the people who are sitting under vast super cap umbrellas are just really looking at the one piece of, well, it's reducing my overall sort of intake.
Yeah, exactly. And there's a big difference between what are the big super cap umbrellas and the like minor super cap umbrellas too, right?
Mhm.
And it's a difference that is quite relevant, right? The difference between being under, for example, let's say the GOTG super cap umbrella in Declan and being under the umbrella in Delve is massive. What those umbrellas can handle is massively different. And the GOTG umbrella, with say 4 minutes and a significantly reduced tank, which might need to go into panic that much quicker, might not be able to save his people. Much the same as in the drone regions or in renter situations or so on and so forth. Right? There's a vast difference in terms of what these groups can handle. And to me, I really dislike the change in that way, where it just forces people. Well, it doesn't force them, but it
Urges, yeah.
incentivizes people to go into the bigger blocks.
Yeah. Find that safety. I don't like that either. The other thing is they're changing the Rorqual. This is the last thing we'll talk about the Rorqual. To be more of a boosting ship. Does anybody use it as a boosting ship for other mining vessels?
Yeah, I mean that's going to be more viable as well. I mean, the funny thing is that some people who are basically saying that they will rage quit now are saying that I might as well change my fleet setup. I will quit using 6 or 8 Rorquals or whatever, and I will just use one Rorqual and 10 Hawks, because that's going to be way less in terms of is being at risk, and I will get almost as much revenue from it. So, but I think isn't that the direction they want to take? Like having the Rorqual as primarily a boosting ship?
Well, I don't know. I think they needed to give it a time where it could be piloted instead of just being boosting from a pause and just an alt that you put up and left there. And maybe that time has happened. It's been 3 years or so where
No,
Rorqual's been piloted.
yeah, no question about that. I mean, look, I think they're afraid to take away the thing that they probably don't want anymore, which is the overall mining, just the mining capability of it. But then also, well, what's use is it, and all those people who, at the same time that the Rorqual was introduced as a miner, they introduced its skill injectors, and everybody out there ran and skill injected up alts and went and did this. to create the proliferation, right, as rapidly as it did. I really wonder if if the Rorqual came out at that time as it's proposed to be now, would you have still had the same level of kind of, you know,
No.
I mean, Graf Telkin, who I don't know when the last time he mined, way back in, when he immediately comes out and starts creating Rorqual alts, and I don't know how much you mined before this, Vily, but I don't know
I
if you were
didn't.
a big consumer guy.
I didn't, and I was actually kind of one of the people that got fucked by this because once your characters have a certain amount of SP, you basically can't inject them, right? So
Oh
all of my
yeah.
all of my guys are like 100 million SP, whatever. So I had to like manually train them towards Rorquals, and it took a couple months to say the least. But it's just so much. The ISK is so easy, and as I say, it's been great for my housework. I get a lot of stuff done while I'm Rorqual mining.
I think
But
that's great.
I definitely appreciate it.
That's how they, you know what? That's how they keep Vily in the game. You let people have a little bit of lifestyle where they don't feel like they're stuck and not accruing.
Well, I can tell you, man. I used to, super carrier rat for a little bit when we were in Vale and some other places, and it's like when you're like hard on like StarCraft APMs like for an hour or two, it just drains the hell out of you, right? If for 250, 300 mil an hour, I mean that's nice, that's good money, but it's incredibly draining, right? Versus Rorqual mining, where I can literally just pop my guys in the belt, start doing some stuff, and 6 hours later I come back and I've got 3 built, right?
Yeah, it's a semi-passive income. Yeah, I think you kind of need that. I don't know if Rorqual's the right thing, but you need those passive incomes for people not to feel like they're going to fall behind if they're not on the game constantly.
Well, look, mining was always the slow.
Oh, hi,
paced,
Pando. Sorry.
Mining was always the slow-paced form. Look, when you're out there mining with exhumers, whether you're running a fleet of, however many personally or what have you, right? It's you mine, and if the alert comes, boom, you warp off the field. I mean, if you got caught in exhumers before, like you were just bad, here they created a vessel that was kind of stationary out there, right? Because if you're using that, if you're using that industrial core and whatnot, you're locked in place. You had more value out in the field, making it more worthwhile for people to come and try to kill you. The question is whether or not that was a big benefit to the game, or if it was more of a long-term kind of negative in terms of what it led to in terms of Rorqual mining.
Hey guys, sorry, I had to figure out my voice settings first. Yeah,
No problem.
I use Discord voice so rarely. Like about the whole discussion about, like, in general,
Yeah.
about the Rorquals. I think removing Rorquals totally, which might be one thing that results from this patch, is the wrong way to go, because like they cause so much content for people, right? And it wasn't the Rorquals that are so strong, in my opinion. It was just the ease with what, like, it was so easy to defend them. Just drop 5 Horde Titans, you're done, right? Super Cap Umbrella, you don't even need to form, you don't need to ping anyone. You just form the 5 guys you have got on comms, just dump in, and everything is good, right? If you would be forced to field some subcaps to defend them, it would be a whole different story. There wouldn't be that OP, and
Well, the problem is they missed the key problem in this situation, which is super carriers in this nerf, right? Like as I've
Also, yes.
been trying to say, is like the real problem with super carriers is sirens and dromies, right? The fact that like you show up with subcaps and I drop 10 supers, every one of those supers has a a web and a point, and those long range fighter bombers apply perfectly, like fucking cruise. Like,
Yeah, I agree.
they got the hot titans, good fucking job, very good job. But
No. I wouldn't say good job. 50% of a fuck you is still a massive fuck you. Right?
No, well,
Also,
listen, it's a very good step in the right direction to me. But they miss super carriers, which are to me the bigger problem when it comes to super capitals protecting things like Rorquals, etc.
Real quick, going back just a little bit, somebody's asking me to clarify on the insurance changes for capitals and super carriers. Just to clarify, the super carriers are the insurance payout that you get back. The money that you get back is 50% of what it was, or will be if these changes happen. And for capital ships, which are everything from freighters to dreadnoughts to carriers, the insurance money that you get back when it blows up will be down 33%. And Vily said that's not a big change, at least for dread bombs, because people don't consider the reimbursement costs to be a big factor in wanting to use them. Clarified that. Pando, what do you think of the changes in general? The things in here you like or dislike?
Also, in general, I think it goes in the right direction. I think some changes could have been a little bit more, what do you call it, like elegant, I guess. You know, the Horde Titan thing, I'm not convinced. Like, it doesn't. I don't think it changes a bit. Still, super cap umbrellas are going to dominate everything. Now it's pushing all the Rorquals even more into that big blob, and I think that's the last thing we need in EVE, is pushing people closer to coalitions, right? Like, would be nice to have more smaller groups than these big groups. And I think the intention was there, but they kind of failed the objective.
The execution is lacking.
Yeah. And then, I mean, Horde dreads are not a real problem. I mean, they are, but it's not as apparent, I would say. I would have loved to see actually Horde guns to be like polarized guns, right? Like, if you field a Horde Titan, you might just have 10%, 20% resists, and a Horde Dread might have like 50% resists. Because effectively, like, a Horde Dread still tanks certain sized subcap fleets easily too, and I think that's not balanced either. But if they're killable, I mean, field your 20% Titan. You know, it's if you want to have those Horde guns and you want to be OP with application, you might just get dread bombed. So there's this risk involved then, right? Because at the moment, that's the big problem. There's no risk whatsoever. If you see 5 Horde Titans or so, like, you just whoop off, basically. Right?
God, I hate the term hawk, because every time I hear somebody say it, I think they're saying whore. The whore type. Whore gun.
HAW again is HAW, high angle weaponry. It's made for big ships to shoot little ships.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on the diminishing return reps, Pando?
Well, that's actually an idea I've thrown out before. Like, so I actually like that. I really like that.
I don't particularly not like it either, but are you happy with where the percentage of diminishing cap hits, or?
I didn't look exactly at the numbers, but I think it looked like, at the first glance, it looked all right. Like, what I had in mind when I first suggested something like that, I said it shouldn't be the rep amount, but it should be the amount of reppers. So only let's say, like, whatever the magic number is, let's say the best 20 reps would apply to your ship, right? That would give also fax pilots the incentive to actually fit faction reps and, good stuff, which would also, then you wouldn't need the whole insurance thing, right? You can fly cheap stuff and get away with it, but the cheap stuff is actually, shit. So you don't want to use it. You want to use good stuff, but that's not there now. Everyone's going to stay on cheap stuff.
I think one criticism of that would be that people would use friendly reppers, or enemies. You would rep the enemy first and take up one of those slots with, you'd basically be target painting it with the logistics.
Yeah, you would use the best reps, right? So let's say 50 reps are like on the target, but only the 20 bests would count, right?
Yeah.
And if you take resist into account, then nobody's going to shield rep your armor Titan, and then because that's already ideas thrown around, which is kind of funny.
Yeah, maybe a calculation workload for the server, maybe.
Yeah, I wonder. It might be to actually get it done perfectly, that might just be too complicated. So I'm happy with the approach they've done. Like, I hope.
Yeah, to me the approach seems fine. Like I think it. My only concern is the percentage cap.
Since this was a rather broad-based balance pass, and in the dev blog they allude to more in the future, like what? Okay, as you guys being senior.
No. Stop. Never count on CCP to make a fucking balance change, like ever. Like,
Well,
yeah. Well, we're gonna do this in July. I was gonna get shield slaves 4 years ago. They're now promising they'll get these shield slaves in July, theoretically. Don't plan for CCP changes. It doesn't end well.
Wait, but it says right here.
Well, and that's where I was going with this. Is what's the expectation that you have for? Let's assume that this comes out the way it is. What's the expectation you have for there to be follow up and iteration?
0.
Yeah, assume this is it for the next 3 years.
It says here.
Listen, CCP can say what they're going to do, whatever they want, but their track record is I'll do something and then I'll forget about it for 5 years. As we were saying, half an hour ago, these Rorqual nerfs would probably all be okay if they would have done them one by one. When you start hitting Rorquals from 4 different angles all at once because you haven't done a balance pass in years, that's when people get really upset because then it feels like you're fucking hammering them, which you are.
So right here it says, the last part that we haven't covered, balance roadmap headed for summer, and they talk about a new ship and some module content and some more changes to balance. And then it says something very coy. I think it says, in July we are planning to introduce some long anticipated implant sets. And at the top of that long anticipated, by the way, unquote, at the top of that list is shield slaves. Implants that help your shield buff tank.
It's gonna be so funny if that comes out and shield slaves are not part.
It would be disastrous, I think. So that would be interesting. They seem to be toying with that because it's been a big complaint for a while. Vily's not convinced.
Well, I mean, I gave up, waiting, right? We built our shield supercap force, under the assumption that, for 6 months we would be getting shield slaves because they were a year overdue at that point. We now have the force, we've had the battles, and we still don't have them. We're still lagging behind in terms of the strengths of shield supers. We're finally going to get our implants, maybe in July. At what point does a man just give up and say, it'll come when it'll come, right?
Yeah.
Will also take you a while to actually get your dudes into them.
Yeah, and then it'll be another 3 to 4 months of
first
people buying, stuff off the sand shelf.
Will take a while.
What goes into shield implants so I can start buying all that stuff up?
Well, it would just be Sanchez LP as far as I'm tracking. If their original plan from 2015 is still the way they wanted.
Well, that boost though, I mean, let's just look 6 months up down the road. It will make your setup even more powerful because you went ahead and invested in shields. Whatever.
I have a question, by the way. This actually goes back to the Rorquals, but it seems to me that everyone which is quite weird, but it seems to me everyone agrees that making those is it called incitements? I forgot the word. Anyway, pushing people in
incentives.
Incentives. Making those incentives to have people join in the big blocks is generally considered to be a bad thing. I mean, I hear people saying that just both from the small blocks and big alliance blocks and everything. So, but these changes seem to do that to some extent. But what would you guys say would be the actual answer to have people not feeling forced to join the big blocks in order to be viable doing Rorqual mining, for example?
Well, for one, nerf the super caps and titans properly, right? So people have to defend the Rorquals with subs. If you fight only subs, your first thing should be bring in subs, and then you can supplement it with caps to bring that extra DPS. But you can.
I think
it can be quite painful then for big groups.
I think personally one of the best ways to allow smaller groups to utilize Rorquals would be to decrease the cycle time of Rorquals. That would be a big step to allowing small groups to utilize them.
It's
Just,
going to be so hard to catch them, though. Holy shit.
I am tracking, but if the reality is smaller groups are not playing at the same level, right? If they get caught by certain groups, they're just dead, right?
Yeah.
It's not exactly fair that you get caught here, you just die instantly, right?
Well,
So at least gives them a chance to.
What we've seen before too is that one or two small groups, they're going with like super cheap fits. Right? So they save their excavators, they can save them, which is now changed to some degree at least. And they fit their Rorqual so cheap that by the time you actually catch them, they made that money back easy peasy, and then short. So you can play that game. Not sure if that's the approach you want to do, because if you get caught in your system like twice a week, like, it's going to be a busy system. So there's not going to be much Rorqual money going on there.
Well, overall, we'll wrap up with this. I got to take off. Overall, it seems like the way to help little groups without distorting the effect for big groups is with diminishing returns. And one of the things that was encouraging about this is they said because of the new server, because of their new technology, and I think it was Brain in a Box, which is, I won't explain it, but it was an advancement for them. They're able to do more calculating stuff that can allow for systems that are diminishing in returns. So everybody gets a big benefit at the beginning, but it slowly curtails off. So if you put people that can do it for hours and hours without being interrupted, they're going to get a diminishing return over time and probably be dissuaded because it's not a good use of time. Although they might scale people and then they have a different problem. But diminishing returns, I think, are powerful ways of fixing things. And I disagree with somebody in chat who said it's a lazy way to balance. I don't think it's lazy at all. I think it's a very sophisticated way to balance. And it really is the only way to balance for certain things, because players can always get another client and add another thing, or they can all amass into the same group and do it all together in relative safety. Those are some of the big problems that you're seeing. All right, we're at the 2-hour mark. I'm going to go ahead and get going into real life, but I want to tell you that tonight at I don't really know what it is Eve time. I think it's 1 a.m. Eve time, but the time has shifted, so I'm sorry about that. But look out at Talking in Stations channel. We'll have the midweek report, which will come up with Artemis and friends. And all the time we're in TIS Discord talking about this stuff in public, so join us there. And Tuesdays, Thursdays, now we have these casual public streams, so you guys can join us and talk about what's on your mind. There's a lot of stuff we didn't get to this time. We'll talk about it next Tuesday. But for now, I want to say thanks to everybody, Vily especially, for coming in and talking to us, and to Pando, and before him, Killah Bee was here, and Dirk, and Amar. Thank you guys. All right, and thanks for watching. We will see you tonight for Talking in Stations midweek report. Thank you.